Hello and welcome to HaXeZ, where today we're doing another Hack to Learn video, and this is part 4, Open Source Intelligence Gathering and Passive Reconnaissance. These two terms could be used interchangeably, and what it is, it's the act of gathering information about your target without directly interacting with it. So if you were to find your target, you know its IP address, and you performed a port scan on it and pinged it, that would be considered active engagement or active scanning or active reconnaissance. You're gathering information about the target using active techniques because you're directly interacting with it. What open source intelligence gathering or passive reconnaissance is it's gathering as much information about your target without directly interacting with it. So you would use publicly available resources such as websites, tools that interact with publicly available services to gather as much information about your target as possible. This could be the footprint of the target, it could be the domains that they have registered or the IP addresses that they own, it could be employees that they have working for them and employee email addresses and other contact details. It's essentially gathering as much information about the target using various different techniques, but without actively engaging with any of the target's infrastructure or employees or resources, should we say. One of the best open source intelligence gathering and passive reconnaissance tools out there are search engines. Google, for instance, is the most popular search engine on the internet, and it isn't by chance. It is a powerful search engine that's pretty much indexed everything, and it offers a number of very powerful search operators that allow you to find information. These search operators can range from anything such as whatever you put in single quotation marks will give you an exact match. So if you search for site or something in those quotation marks, it will give you only results that match it exactly. But if you try to search for things that were a bit silly, you won't get any results from it, but you will get your suggestions. What you can also do is you can search specifically for information about specific sites or domains. So if we just use the site operator and just did gov.uk, all the information that's returned on here will have .gov.uk in the domain name. I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit. So all the results on here will be .gov.uk, and if you said exact match, maybe something like top secret, you will get results that are on the .gov.uk domain that are specifically related to top secret information. Again, doesn't necessarily mean it is top secret information, and if it ever loads, you might find out what it is. Okay, so it's talking about officers and things like that, but it just shows how powerful these syntaxes can be once you start chaining them together. So what we could also do is we could specify something like file type and do PDF, and then you've got government security classifications PDF. So if you were looking for something specific, maybe you're doing an essay or looking for information about a target, perhaps you could do something along the lines of passwords and change the PDF value to a CSV, because we know CSV is a Excel format. Perhaps we could just do .text to improve it a little bit, and you can see there we have some information. This looks quite juicy. Again, this isn't stuff I've searched for previously, this is just stuff that I've found now. Some of it's getting me a little bit worried because there was a mention of MI5 there, so I probably shouldn't be Google dorking for information like that, but this information is all publicly listed and available on the internet, so you really do have to ask yourself where the legal grey area is. Can we get in trouble for this? I don't think we should be able to get in trouble for this. By the way, as soon as you click the link, you are participating in active reconnaissance because you're going onto the site, and they can track your IP address. It will be in the Apache logs, but it's a good way to gather information about domains. And again, you can look for files. I probably shouldn't have gone with the site.gov one because it is a bit more specific and it will get you looking at the specific sites, but you can chain so much together and find so much information. For instance, if you say you were looking for licenses for a particular piece of software, you could do site paste bin or any other site that allows you to paste text, and then in text you could do license key, and then you pipe because you want to add another filter onto it, and you type expiration, and then you'll see I've looked at a few of them. But you will find licenses because in the text you're searching for license key and expiration on the site called pastebin, which is notorious for people just pasting information now. We could probably filter it even more and do something like in text username password. See what that comes up with. Goes passwords. Now, again, it's not my fault this stuff's on the internet, and yeah, I'm showing you how to find it, but Google, it's called Google Dorking, and it's using these operators, and there's lots of them. You will not struggle to find Google Dork cheat sheets out there on the internet. Have some insanely powerful queries on them. You can use it to find open IP cameras. You can use it to find credit card information. Not that you should be doing those types of things. We are ethical hackers here. You can use it to find robots.txt files, which may show you where directories are. You can use it to find backup files, PHP info files, top secret information that's been misindexed. There is so much potential with Google Dorking. Just go out there, look for a Google Dork cheat sheet, and you will see some of them are completely bunk, but there's loads on there. I've created a basic one. Feel free to download it from my site. Again, I've just copied and pasted a bunch of queries that I thought were pretty cool, especially this one down at the bottom. And yeah, I will put that on my website, but feel free to download it, but go look for your own. If you reference it anywhere, give credit to the people who originally found the syntax. But Google Dorking, insanely powerful open source reconnaissance information gathering tool. Get on it. Okay, the next tool I want to talk about is called Maltego. And Maltego, it's kind of hard to describe. It's I believe it's mostly open source intelligence, although I wouldn't be surprised if it does run some sort of pings and active scans in the background. But it's a way for you to gather information about a target, and it has these options. So if like they're called entities, so say we want to find information about a specific domain, we throw the domain on there, double click it, edit it, and we can do, let's just do .gov. Let's do gov.uk again. Let me click OK. And then we have something called transforms. So you can see them down here on the left. Zoom in a little bit. But if we right click this, you can see we have a number of transforms that we can run. So let's first of all try to find the mail servers. No entities. Okay, so we couldn't find them there. Let's try and find the name servers. Okay, so now we found some name servers, so we know what the domain name is using for its zone files and things like that. We know where its DNS records are stored. That's really sensitive information that we could gather. We know what these hosts are, so if we could compromise one of these hosts, potentially we could edit the zone file for .gov.uk and meddle with it and add subdomains and our own sort of information to it. Not that we would. But you can also do things like find common DNS names. Let's have a look if that comes back with anything. Okay, so we've now found blog.gov and we found gateway.gov. So these are other domain names that are resolved. So it's not dragging. Okay, so these are other domain names that are active, they're real. Can we move on now? There we go. So these are other domain names that are real domains. They active, they resolve, and yeah, it can again allow you to map out more of the sort of domain and the footprint of the organization. So we've just ran another one there. No entities. We can try using domain name schema directory. Again, I don't know what all of these do, and some of them probably could be active. Okay, so we found some more sort of DNS records here. And again, you can tell I'm like a bit of a noob with this. Like, I haven't used it that much. I had to play around with it the other day, and I thought, you know what, this tool is great. It's something I definitely want to like explore more. DNS names with properties, find other top level domains, to domains DNS perhaps. No results found. But you can see how quickly you can build up a map of their entire organization. So if you went with something like evilcorp.com, you pop that in there, you could find subdomain names. So you could find a development.evilcorp.com or .org or whatever it is, .corp. And you could find things that aren't necessarily as well maintained as other sites or their primary site, and perhaps it's got an out-of-date version of SQL or PHP or Apache on there which has a vulnerability which you can exploit. So what we can also do is we can look for email addresses that contain that. Okay, that didn't come up with anything, but we can search for other email addresses to email address from whois information. What this will do is this will query the whois information and see if there is a email address on that. In this case, it doesn't look like there is, so we can search public PGP. And oof, you can see that we now have some email addresses. And what can you do with email addresses? Well, again, if you're doing a red team engagement, which would be totally legal, you would have your sort of rules of engagement set out, and you would have your get out of jail free card. Again, this isn't for illegal hacking, it's for ethical hacking. But you could then, if social engineering wasn't outside of the scope of the engagement, you could absolutely look into more of these email addresses. You got David Cameron at gov.uk right there. You got PM at gov.uk, and you could send them phishing emails, provided a phishing campaign is within the scope of the assessment. So what else can we search for? Email addresses, PGP, email addresses using search engines. Let's see what this brings back. Okay, that brought back, a significant amount of more email addresses there. You can see, probably shouldn't reveal these names on the internet, but hey ho, again, it is all publicly available on the internet. I'm not actively engaging with the target here. It's scraping search engines, pulling this information back in, and just giving it to us in a nice presentable format. What else can we do? Files. Look for interesting files. Poof, okay, sweet. The community edition does limit you to 12 searches, I believe, or 12 results per search. But if you had the actual release candidate version, the amount of information you could gather would be overwhelming. As you can imagine, it's already populated so much, it's already populated so much based off of a few clicks. And if you really know what you're doing and you know how to use this tool, you can gather so much information so quickly. I mean, look at this. Phone numbers from whois. Okay. Have we found any phone numbers? Okay, I don't think that returned any entries, but we can come down again. Phone numbers using search engines. Crawls the search engines, and look, we've got a bunch of phone numbers, but we're limited to 12, so we know there's more. And what can you do with phone numbers? More social engineering. You can phone them up, pretend to be from the IT department, and tell them, you need to tell me your password because you've been hacked. And then they give you your password, and you can RDP into their box and steal all their sensitive information. Not that you would, but as part of a red team engagement, this type of information could be fantastic to help you build up your knowledge. So if you did want to enter the building, you can be like, oh, but I know customer registration. He works upstairs and his telephone number is blah. Do you know what I mean? And you could convince the security guards operating at the front desk to let you into the building, where then you can find the Ethernet port, jack in, and compromise their entire network. But this is Maltego. I wish I had more time to go through it. Again, you can look at all the entities that you've got on the side. You've got cryptocurrencies, you've got, yeah, just so much. Things with CVEs, IP4 addresses, MX records, you name it, it's all here. There's David Cameron, and yeah, that is Maltego. Give it a try on Linux. Just go to their website, maltego.com. Or, yeah, go into the terminal, apt-install Maltego, and it will be there. Set up the community edition. You do have to register, but this is another fantastic tool for open source intelligence gathering and passive reconnaissance. So the next tool I want to talk about is Have I Been Pwned? Now, I'm sure you're already aware of this and the power of it and how good it is. Have I Been Pwned is a website where they have archived all the database leaks, all the majorly public database leaks that have happened throughout history. So the Rocky word list, that came from a leak, and I believe they've got that on there. The LinkedIn database leak, which happened a while ago, which exposed loads of user-sensitive information, was in there. And what it does is, if you pop in your email address, admin@haxz.org, it will tell you whether or not you've been pwned. I rarely use my email to sign up for anything, but if you think of the potential of this when you combine it with services like Maltego, for instance, you search the internet for email addresses using Maltego, you scrape the web instead of doing it manually, and then you find someone like davidcameron.gov.uk. What you can then do, and I do want to try one thing, but you could just, okay, has any of these been compromised? Okay, so David Cameron, I didn't expect this, but David Cameron's email address was pwned in 2 data breaches. Sister date in November 2020, a collection of more than 23,000 alleged breaches. Websites known as Zero Day were made available to download on several hacking forums. The data consisted of 226 million unique email addresses alongside password pairs, often represented as both password hashes. Anyway, so what I wanted to try was some wildcards, actually, and see if you could do that. Can't wildcard search, try the domain search feature instead. Okay, so they do have a lot of sort of powerful information. Okay, so you need to do verification, get an email. Do you have to do that? Verify by email. See, I've not looked at this tool this much, but it is something I wanted to look at. And to include, because it's a great open source intelligence gathering tool. Because, for instance, say if like you have a client and they just want a penetration test, and you go into the information gathering phase and you don't check whether they've been included in any data breaches. Okay, fair enough. They would probably want to know if any of their email addresses have been leaked. So if you grab their domain name, you know that they've got ex-employee working for them because you find it on LinkedIn. You can pop their email address in, or do wildcards on the domain like I tried there, or on domain searches, and find out whether they've been compromised. And you can report that information and make suggestions of frequent password rotations. But you could potentially find passwords that are still in use that have been compromised, which would be a huge security risk. Because it's not hard to find these database leaks. There was raid forums, which wasn't even on the dark web, which had most of these leaks available, or you just had to buy them for cryptocurrency. But you can buy leaks on the dark web. I'm pretty sure you can buy them on the clear web. But Have I Been Pwned will check any email address, telephone number, which was recently added because of the Facebook leak. I call it a leak, it was just publicly listed information. They just built a massive word list of telephone numbers, but it will check to see all of your email addresses, domains, phone numbers, and other things that you can submit to it, and check whether it's been involved in a leak. And then, yeah, you could go look for the leaks, or just report it and say, okay, we found these email addresses have all been compromised. And you should probably implement some sort of password rotation policy just to make sure. Again, it's a low ball finding unless the password that is included in the database leak is still being used as their valid password. I would have expected some hacker to have gone in and owned that account by the time, you're now reporting on it X years later. But it's another great tool. The developers are great. They keep it up to date. And yeah, it's worth including in your OSINT open source intelligence gathering, passive information scanning, just to check to see whether any of the email addresses you found through tools like Shodan show up in any leaks. Okay, so this one takes me back a bit. This is one of my favorite tools, one of my favorite applications. It takes me back to technical support when I used to work for an internet service provider or a web hosting provider. It's MX Toolbox, and essentially what it is, or what it started off as, was a tool to look up the MX records for a domain name, make sure they are propagated properly, and just to see, where your mail's being sent. But then it grew, and I swear they add new tools to it every day. It's been a long time since I've been on here, but they've got so much information. And again, because you're doing the lookups through their site, it's their servers that's performing the reconnaissance and giving it back to you. So if, for instance, we wanted to do a whois lookup on gov.uk, they're performing the whois lookup and we're receiving the information. Although evidently not that much information. But again, there's like a great amount of tools on there that you can use to not only troubleshoot domains, you can see I've got a CNAME on there, but to genuinely probe the domain for as much information about it as possible. You can see there I was looking up the MX records. That could potentially give you the IP addresses of the MX servers, or at least the A records that point to the MX servers, which you could then do an NS lookup on, find the IP address of it, and potentially go and try and compromise the mail records. But it also allows you to do things like ping. Is the site blocking you? So if, for instance, you've been thrashing a website with brute force login requests or directory searching, and all of a sudden it stops responding, and you're like, crap, I might have crashed the site here. What you can do, throw the domain into the ping tool, and it will go ahead and it will try and ping it, and provided ICMP is enabled on the target domain name, it will come back and it will be like, nah, it's fine mate, you haven't knocked it offline, it's online, it's just blocked here because you've been being daft. That's one of the tools. You've also got, I think there's a trace route on here as well. Yeah, you've got a trace route, so you can see what path it's taking to get to the domain name. Is it going through Virgin Media's infrastructure? Is it hopping here and there? I don't really see how that could be too beneficial to you, unless, you wanted to compromise one of those endpoints, and then any users that try to go to that site, you can redirect them to a malicious site by modifying the host file. Again, there's use cases for a lot of these tools. That's taken a long time. But yeah, again, MX Toolbox, okay, I'm going to skip that one. MX Toolbox is a tool that I'm really fond of. I used it all the time when I was in technical support to check whether things had propagated properly, to check whether a customer's DNS had propagated, and it's just got so many different things that you can do to enumerate information about a domain name. You can check whether it's got a mail server. Now we'll try and tell you, whether smtp.gov exists and what the IP address is. Actually, I believe this one checks to see whether the mail server is configured correctly. And again, that could be useful to you if you realise that the mail server isn't configured correctly because maybe the host name and the MX record don't match up. Can't remember the specifics of it, it's been a long time. But you could potentially use that to your advantage somehow. I'm not too sure how. But again, it's got analyze headers. You could throw an email header in there that you've received or managed to get from one of the people in the organisation. Say you ring up and you're like, oh, I'm interested, you ask to speak to reception or HR, you say, I'm interested in applying for a job, can you send me some information about it and how to apply? And they're like, yeah, absolutely, because you sound lovely on the phone, and they want to give you as much information as possible because you've been polite, you've been respectful. So they send you an email, you grab that email, you throw the email headers into the email header analyzer, and it's going to tell you where the email server is that sent the email, and it's going to tell you like various hops and a bit more information about the emails that you've received. You got DNS lookups, so you could say, for instance, a record. So what was one of the sites we found on Maltego, if I still got it open? So was it, that's email addresses, where's the DNS gone? business.gov.uk. okay, let's take this one for instance. So we want to find out what the A record is, but we don't want to ping it, and we don't want to do anything that's actively going to engage with it. We put the blame on MX Toolbox and be like, no officer, it was them who was doing the searching for that information. And we can see there, business.gov.uk resolves to an IP address of 216.46.10. And what we can also do is we grab that email address, we can go back to All Tools, and I think we have a tool somewhere where we can look up the IP address. Somewhere. Well, we can check it on blacklists. Whois? Yeah, what am I thinking? We can just throw it into Whois. Sorry, I had a bit of a brain fart there. And what this will do is this will check to see who owns the IP address. Please try again later. Invalid input. Queries work for fully qualified domain names and is an IP address. Documentation available here. Okay, you can do Whois lookups on IP addresses, so I'm not sure why that's not working, but perhaps they do have a... It is a great platform to perform open source intelligence gathering or passive reconnaissance, because you're interacting with MX Toolbox, and MX Toolbox is doing all of the heavy lifting for you. It's running the tools, it's grabbing the records, so it's not you. You're not actively engaging with it. Yeah, give it a check. And if you work in tech support and are getting into cyber and you don't know about this tool, what are you playing at? Get on it. It's a great tool. And now we step into the realm of the shinobi, of the samurai, of the Shodan. Shodan is a search engine for internet connected devices. You can pop search parameters into their search box and it will return information about what you've searched for. It's the Google for the machines that are connected to the internet. You knew this one was coming. It's probably by far one of the best open source intelligence tools out there, and it's honestly, if I wasn't limited to 20 searches a day, I could spend all night on Shodan just looking for various different things. It's so powerful. It can find things using default credentials. It can find things with no credentials. It can find MySQL servers in London. It can find websites hosted in your local city. It can find IP cameras with no password protection. It is a phenomenal tool that crawls the internet, indexes all these devices, grabs the headers, and gives you various parameters that you can search in order to find these devices with the key syntaxes that you're looking for. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, but Shodan is by far one of my favorite tools. It's a great search engine, and yeah, you can see how powerful it is in a moment when I start feeding it search strings. But yeah, be warned, with great power comes great responsibility. Yes, I'm ripping off Spider-Man, but it is so true in this case, because you can find things that are insecure, and it wouldn't take you a lot to own it. Honestly, you can find open directories, you can find SMB servers with no authentication enabled, and you know what you can do with that. It's just overwhelming the amount of information you can find, and that people actually have these things online that, you know, who's managing these devices that we're able to find. So for instance, Shodan has a number of filters. we can do things like city equals London, and it will show you all devices that are in London. I've got to be careful because I don't want to expire my I've only got 20 search credits per day. You can do, for instance, you can refine it. You can say country equals GB. Let's zoom in on that. Product, okay, that didn't increase anything. Product equals MySQL. So you can find all SQL servers in London. You could find all servers in London that have port 22 open or port 2049 open. You can do, yeah, so you can search for things like port 3389. That'll give you MySQL servers. You can search for organizations. So if I wanted to do org, google.com, or let's go with, maybe not. Yeah, let's just go with google.com, or just Google because that's the organization name, and that will show you all the assets owned by Google LLC. Say if you wanted to find all operating systems that are running Windows. What you can also do, you can see that authentication enabled for SMB, but what you could also do is something along the lines of, and you have to bear with me because I've forgotten the syntax a little bit, so you do OS Windows and then you do HaXeZ underscore screenshot, and then you type yes, and then that, okay, what have I done wrong there? HaXeZ screenshot, there we go, and then this will only return indexed items that have screenshots, and as you can see here, it's the remote desktop logging for a lot of things. But even if you just did a search for HaXeZ screenshot, this will return things like IP cameras. Okay, you got a Windows login box there, Windows login box there, Windows login box there, you got an IP camera there. Do you see where we're at yet with how powerful this tool can be? And again, if you get some really good, there's cheat sheets out there, but if you get some really good search strings, you can find some really interesting things. So for instance, if I wanted to do authentication disabled, and I'm not sure what the RGB does, I won't lie, actually, I've got a different search for that. Authentication, let's try this. Authentication disabled, NAT login, sys volume, Unix. I don't know why I've got Unix on there. Port 445. Okay, that didn't return anything. I have got the search query here, but I've not properly verified that it works. Invalid search query. Okay. There we go. Right. Now, as you can see here, your SMB status. SMB is short for server message block, I'm sure you know. It's a file sharing protocol that allows you to share resources across the internet. It's usually Windows based and has a plethora of issues where you can enumerate shares, you can enumerate usernames, you can drop scripts on it, execute it and get, like, you know, local system access on it. But as you can see here, this SMB server in India has authentication disabled, and they have admin, C drive, C. All of these are the drives that have been shared. You can see there you got C drive there, IPC, default, admin. A lot of these could just be honeypots, so you have to be careful. Again, you could be setting yourself up for failure if you're going in and trying to access these devices. But yeah, what this will typically find due to the additional parameters there is actually domain controllers. You can do it by just searching for port 445 with the search syntax of authentication disabled, and that will just find all SMB servers that have authentication disabled. I've tried to string a search string together for NFS servers for Linux, but I haven't got it working quite yet, and as I was making progress, I ran out of credits last night. So what I wanted to do is try to find a way that Shodan would index sort of NFS sites and like a welcome banner, like a default welcome banner that you could query for. but I haven't successfully been able to do it. What you can also do as well is, say you want to find an FTP server with anonymous login. Say you've written a really powerful tool, but you don't want anyone to find it, and you're about to be raided by the FBI or someone. Okay, I'm taking a piss, but do you know what I mean? Like, you may have a valid reason for a report to search for all servers on the internet or that have been indexed by search engines that allow anonymous logins. So you can throw this query syntax in it, and you can see there that all these FTP servers support anonymous login, which means you can log in, you can run queries like dir, download, get, upload. You got some in Russia, you got some in Taiwan. So again, this is the power of Shodan. It's amazing, and to get started you can sign up and log in. I believe I bought a initial access to it on Black Friday. I got it for like $4, I think it was. But yeah, keep an eye out on Black Friday to buy a Shodan license and get in, have a look around. It's a lot of fun. Okay, another one here. We've got authentication disabled VNC servers. VNC is a bit like RDP. Okay, that did not work. Yeah, VNC is like what am I doing? RDP. Done it again. Like RDP is some remote management protocol. You can see that authentication disabled, and if we were to try and connect to these through a web browser, it would bring us to the desktop of these machines. I suspect a lot of them have already been compromised, or as I said previously, are honeypots. What you can also do as well, say you're doing some bug bounties, probably not bug bounties to be honest, but say you are doing a penetration test or a vulnerability scan for an organization and no host is off limits, everything is within the scope of the engagement. What you can do is you can type in org Google and then do something like ssl.cert expired equals true, and then that will return all the, is it underscore cert underscore expired? I missed the D off the end. And that will return all the SSL certificates for hosts owned by Google that have been expired. And what we can do is, if we just visit that, you can see there we get the warning, potential security risk ahead, as you will with all of them. Again, I just put that together yesterday because I thought that would be a bit of fun. You know, I could use it for work if I ever got the choice. But there are so many other examples here. So if you go to the Explore section, you can find industrial control systems, databases, network infrastructure, Minecraft servers. And what the best thing is about Shodan is Shodan 2000. Okay, I'm going to try and keep this one short because I realise this video is going on and on and on. But another tool that you can go to, it's more like a resource of information to be honest, but it's OSINTFramework.com. No open source intelligence or passive reconnaissance video would be complete without this. Essentially what it is, it's just a website which uses a sort of horizontal hierarchical structure starting with OSINT Framework, where you can go through each of these options and expand it to different other options. So for instance, if you want to look for usernames, it will then expand it, and then you can do username search engine sites, and it will take you to various different tools that you can use to find usernames. And then you've got the same here for IP addresses, geolocation, IPv4, and it will give you tools or resources or information that you can use to find out about these particular categories that you're searching for. Telephone numbers, you can look up, you know, voicemail, different voicemails, different international calls, Truecaller, SpyDial. I don't even know what half of these things are. To go through every single one would take ages, but I wanted to include it in here. I'm not going to go into it too much because the video is getting really long, but it's a great website which allows you to just go on and say you find a particular, say you're searching for a particular category, it will give you some options. So you want to find email addresses, you want to find usernames, you can follow the hierarchical links through the tree and eventually maybe get to somewhere that will allow you to perform enumeration or search engines for that sensitive information. Okay, so I realise the video is getting a bit long, so thank you for staying with me. There are so many more tools that I wanted to dig into, for instance dig, NSLOOKUP, WHOIS, the specific command line versions of them, because they can be used to get a lot of information about the domain name. But yeah, have a look for those tools, have a look for the syntax and what you can do with them. So we're looking at dig, NSLOOKUP, WHOIS. But the final tool I want to show you today is called the Harvester. And the Harvester scrapes search engines for information and does all the hard work for you. It uses those tools essentially and other tools. It can do active scanning as well. It can do port scans, I believe. But it's a great tool just to gather some information, pop it into a text file and focus on those specific targets later. Now, the syntax of the Harvester is as follows. So I believe you need sudo to run some of the functionality. So you do the tool name, which is the Harvester, and then you want to specify D for domain name. So we're going to do, let's just say .gov.uk, might not get many results from it, and then we apply a limit. But now we want to apply a limit to try and prevent getting blocked by Google and other search engines. So we can do limit of, let's just say 100 requests for now, -L 100, and then we want to specify our sources, so we do -B, and we can do Google, Bing, Yahoo, DuckDuckGo, and just for good measure we can do LinkedIn. And then if we hit return and pop in our sudo password, you'll see that the Harvester fires up. It's written by Christian Martarello. Apologize. Okay, right, so Google's already blocking my IP address. But you can see that we have managed to get some domain names out of it. So we have got some information. We got some IP addresses. No LinkedIn users found. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to switch my VPN quickly if my VPN doesn't crash, which it just did. And I'm going to switch to another IP address and try and do a search from somewhere else. So where's good? Let's go to Argentina. Sure, they don't have HaXeZ there. That would be abusing Google's search engine. Okay, so I'm now connected to Argentina. Let's try that again, but let's go with a different domain. Who do we want to target? So let's go with, okay, let's just go with nasa.gov. And then the Harvester will run, and it will go to the various search engines, and it's probably got a lot of stored queries that it's going to perform in the background, and it will run those on the various search engines, and it will search things like LinkedIn for employee information. And as you can see there, we've got a number of domain names, a number of IP addresses, and again, I think this is all just scraped from the internet rather than passively engaging with it. There are a lot more flags that you can add to it, so I suggest looking at like the help pages to find out the exact like how much potential this tool has. Again, I've not really used it that much, but I'm definitely adding it to my arsenal of tools to use because you just get so much information. I mean, this is what it's got from LinkedIn. It's got all these people's names. I'm sorry for sharing them on my screen. It's probably irresponsible of me, but they are publicly available. How else would it get this information? and you got all the IP addresses. So you could just do like the harvester -help. And there you go. You got a bunch of arguments that you can add on, and it's got multiple different queries there. But that is the harvester, another great open source intelligence gathering tool, passive reconnaissance tool that you can use to gather information about your target before you set out on your engagement. If you've made it this far, give yourself a pat on the back. Thank you very much for watching my video and getting this far. I realise it's long, it's a lot longer than I expected it to be. I wanted to cover more tools, but again, some tools took longer to explain than others. I didn't realise how long I was spending on some tools, so I sort of lost track of time, and I need to get better at managing that. But thank you very much for making it to the end. The tools I've covered barely scrape the surface of the OSINT and passive reconnaissance iceberg of tools that there are, and I'm sorry to the developers out there if I've not covered your tool. I'm sure there are tools and techniques out there that you use that I haven't covered, but I wanted to give a good variety of tools that were fairly easy to use, ranging into a more complex for, you know, new people to the industry. I hope you liked it, and if you made it this far into the video, I would love a thumbs up, or even just a comment to say I made it to the end, because I realise how boring or how crappy my voice must sound after so long. I know I've made a number of errors in the video where I've missaid some sentences and things like that, but after a few takes you realise good enough is good enough, and you just throw it into the editor and you get done. But that's it. This has been HaXeZ. This has been part 4 of Hack to Learn open source intelligence gathering and passive reconnaissance. I hope it's helped you in some way. I hope you've learnt something from it. That's why I'm doing these videos, is to try and help educate the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. I had great teachers when I was learning, so I just want to try and pass that information on. Have a bit of a laugh while we do it. But yeah, this has been HaXeZ. Thank you very much. Kind regards.